Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my homeowner association sued me because my classic Ford Mustang has the wrong color. They thus claim it devalues the neighborhood and ended up repainting my car. Here is how I got revenge on them. And the title story starts like this. I've had so many issues with the HOA in my neighborhood. Following their rules is something that I don't enjoy doing, but I would still obey to avoid fines and fighting. The thing I will not do is follow rules from the homeowner association that don't actually exist and are just things they want. Probably not official rules because they legally cannot get them to pass anyway. For this story, it has to do with my car and then wanting me to get rid of it or alter it in some way. So the car in question was my 1965 Ford Mustang in springtime yellow. The car belonged to my dad, who had taken amazing care of it during his life and left me with it in amazing condition. It's the main thing I have from him, and it had high value in both dollar amount and in sentimental value as well, with the car being worth about $56,000. Their issue with the car was the color, because in their mind a yellow car was a horrible eyesore and the worst thing ever for the neighborhood. I was not about to do a single thing about the car and told them as much. Their response was to turn around and sue me for my car simply existing. They told the court that they wanted me to do one of three things. Number 1, sell the car and get rid of it, keep it hidden in my garage, or paint it an appropriate color. Claiming that while there's no specific rule in the HOA about car colors, it still devalues the neighborhood and is a huge disturbance. Wanting all cars in the neighborhood to be only black, white or silver. Basic colors that they think represent a wealthy area that people want to buy homes in. It may seem like I just rushed through their lawsuit, but that is because it got thrown out very quickly, with the court telling the HOA that they could not force me to do any of those things with my car. It was staying in my driveway looking nice and ironically attracting more people who would see my car and want to stop and talk to me about it. They are clearly dumb and have no idea that classic cars can actually attract people, not turn them away. Losing the lawsuit made the HOA even angrier, but I was just as happy as a clam. The HOA was still telling me that I had to get rid of the car despite what the court said, that they were not giving up and the fight about my car was not over. They were not an intimidating bunch and figured they would try and fail to sue me again in the future. Now, despite how much I love my car, I don't drive it for my everyday car. When I had to go away for a weekend and see my family, I took my everyday car and left the Mustang covered in the driveway. For those questioning why, I don't store it somewhere secure, I don't have a garage. Jump to when I got back home and my car was just gone from my driveway, and an unprepared man might assume that it was just stolen and lost forever. However, I, on the other hand, had turned on some cameras to keep an eye on my car out of slight paranoia. It turns out that was a great thing to do, since now I could see exactly what happened to my car. About 8 hours after I had left for the weekend, a tow truck came and just took it away. I called the tow company, and after getting transferred twice, I had zero patience and started demanding they tell me why they thought it was okay to take a car off of someone's driveway. They talked about how they spoke to the owner, who said the car did not run and needed it removed. I told them that I was the owner of the car and the property, so they clearly did not do any kind of check to make sure. They did not want to tell me who hired them, but after threatening legal action, they were more than happy to provide me with a name, which, surprise surprise, was the HOA president herself. They also revealed that they don't have the car and were paid to take it to a car storage location. I find the HOA president and don't even try to hide my anger as I start yelling at her and demanding my car to be returned right away. Before I called the police, I wanted to give her a chance and to just give it back to me, so I could file a report later instead of calling emergency services. Trust me, I was still pressing charges either way. She put on a smile and gave me the most rehearsed and fake-sounding apology and told me where I could go and pick up my car from. This was not what I expected at all, but whatever, I was gonna get my car back without much hassle. When I saw my car, I figured out why she had sounded so fake and even happy to be caught in her crimes. My car had been painted black and it was a bad paint job on top of that. The seats had paint all over them as well. My car was ruined and any value it had from being vintage and in great condition was gone. Not to mention the sentimental value and memories of driving with Dad in his nice yellow Mustang. Now it was my turn to see the HOA, only this time I was gonna make sure it ended with the HOA president begging. I filed my lawsuit and the HOA actually thought it was a joke when they saw how much money I was suing them for. Even making comments that they were not worried about going to court because my car was old and that meant it was not worth anything. Even claiming the lawsuit will get thrown away and laughing in my face about it. I just bit my tongue to keep the advantage I clearly had over these people with zero car knowledge. Not even thinking about how I also filed a criminal charge against the HOA president personally for grand theft auto. Just because you did not keep it does not mean that you didn't steal it. I showed pictures of the car before and after the HOA president had taken it away and had it painted, making sure to show details on how the seats had also been ruined by the paint. They finally stopped laughing when it was confirmed that the car was worth a good amount of money. And that because of what they did, I was being granted more than what the car would have suspected being worth. Since they also damaged it technically, I got $150,000 granted to me, and the opposite side were freaking out with their lawyers about the money. A few months later, during her criminal trial, the HOA president was found guilty of grand theft auto and sent to prison for it. The time between those two events, though, the HOA was in survival mode and had no idea how to run after that lawsuit. They had no money and were actually now in a deficit because of how much they had to pay me, with other members not wanting to pay their dues, thinking the HOA would not even last another month. Which they were actually right about, because they did end up shutting down because of the entire mess. I don't feel bad about it at all, because they got what they deserved for trying to cause all this trouble over a car being a certain color. And yeah, ripe stars, I would say that greedy, entitled HOA management got exactly what they deserved. I would say the entire neighborhood will be better off in the future without this HOA. Let me know if you agree in the comments. Either way, if you have watched until here, I would very much appreciate it if you could like the video and maybe even leave a comment. Thank you so much. The next one is titled Grape Revenge. My parents rent a house on a 1/4 acre of land. The land with rows of grapes is not being rented to my parents, but the landlords let us pick them and juice them every year. The only access to the grapes is through the land my parents rent. Before my parents moved in, this old lady called Maureen used to pick the grapes with her family and then juice them. As a side note, Maureen has her own grapes, but she likes to use our landlord's grapes too, because previous tenants didn't. Every damn year, it's a battle to make sure Maureen waits to pick the grapes so we can pick a share. The landlord has been clear that we get first dibs on the grapes because we are his actual tenants. We always leave her at least a row, 1 of 4. Every year she tries to be a sneaky little Karen and get the grapes. However, this year was the worst. My mom told Maureen that she was gonna pick the grapes this weekend. And well, this weekend came and went without being able to pick grapes. My mom's helper crew got sick and my dad was recovering from major surgery and she could not find the time or energy. Maureen's crotchety old ass called to inform my mom that she is coming tomorrow to pick all the grapes we didn't. My mom asked her to please wait a few more days as her husband, my dad, has cancer and her helpers were sick. Maureen's response: "That's too bad, you had your chance. My family is coming tomorrow and we are picking the grapes." Of course, my poor mom loses it at this point and begins screaming. "Shame on you, Maureen! You call yourself a Christian!" Maureen continues telling her that she had her chance. So my mom came in and told me this story. I said, absolutely not. We are staying up as late as needed to pick every single grape off the vines. Every single one, you hear me? We both called as many friends as we could. The troops are being gathered. We now have about 10 people to help us pick the grapes, and we will pick every single grape so that when stupid Maureen and her stupid family show up, there will not be one little fruit left on the vine. All-nighter for the grapes. Update: I love how many of you would help pick grapes. It makes me feel bad about the fact that the update is not super satisfying. Maureen called my mom last night, an hour or so into picking, to apologize and said we could have all the grapes. My mom, being a much better person than I am, told her she can still have a row or 2 because we did not need all the grapes. However, Maureen kept saying no and that she won't come by at all. Ironically, it almost sounded like she was throwing a fit about it. Like, Maureen, we are being nice and still letting you come. So we did pick grapes, but not everything. And by the way, we still hate Maureen. Apparently, she is around 92 and she believes she will live forever because of her homemade grape juice, so that's one reason she's so crazy about this whole thing. Maybe she will live forever, but that would be unfortunate because she is an a-hole. And well, ripe stars, if there was a grape juice that made you live forever, I might steal grapes as well. well. Anyway, the next one is a neighbor internet drama story. So I recently got high-speed internet to my house after not having it for nearly a decade. I live in an area that has multiple options for broadband, but my house sits back about a mile off the public road, so most utilities need to be hardlined to work. Despite living on a large piece of property, my one and only neighbor is about 800 feet away from, due to the original owners being family members and wanting their homes to be semi-close. We get along but don't interact much. They have done some things that I consider rude, but they seem like generally okay people. When I first moved in, I worked a deal out with our local internet provider to run a main line to my home. If I could get the neighbor to sign up as well. Reason for that is they allow a certain allowance per customer for construction costs, and with 2 of us the total was high enough to cover everything. Now there's no contract, so they could cancel after the first month. And I offered to pay for their services for the first 3 months as a thank you. They declined and said they were happy with DSL. I explained they didn't have to get rid of anything, I just needed them to allow the line to be ran underground and sign on for a month minimum, and I would cover it. But still, no. We planned on buying a new house eventually, so I never had it installed as I didn't want to pay. With everything going on and working from home, I finally worked a deal out that if I did some of the construction, they would cover any extra costs for the installation. Now my neighbor sees what's going on and comes to ask about our new internet provider. I explained what I had to go through and that he could do the same if he wanted. Next thing I know, an installer is knocking on my door letting me know he's gonna lay cable across my driveway temporarily and that they will need to dig it up to go across permanently. I asked what he was talking about and he said he was installing cable for the neighbor. I said, no you're not from my property anyway. Now the neighbor is begging me to give them an easement for his cable drop. I said no for 2 reasons. Number 1, you screwed me years ago when I wanted cable originally, and number 2, I really don't want them digging into the driveway or having to mow around a wire on the yard all summer. I admit I'm being petty, but I don't think I'm an a-hole here. I mentioned it to a friend and they went off about how everyone is struggling and that I should be a good neighbor and stop being a spiteful a-hole. Just to add a couple things because I've gotten so many questions, under the original deal 10 years ago, I approached the neighbors about a year after moving in. I explained that I noticed we were not serviceable by the cable company, so I approached them to find out what had to be done. I explained that the cable company had to agree to doing the work and that I would let them do everything on my property. The cable company required me to put a deposit of $10,000 down, which would be returned after we both got service to our homes. I explained that they didn't have to sign or do anything to proceed, but that I just needed them to sign up for service for a month once it was done so that I could get my deposit back. I offered to pay for that and also offered to pay for their first 3 months of service if they chose to permanently switch. They had 0 interest in helping out. This alone has cost me $18,000 over the last 10 years. That deal no longer exists, and with rising costs of everything, I reached out to the cable company again to see what they could do. They agreed to cover above and beyond their normal allowance if I handled excavation. Construction costs were around $70,000, $60K of that was installing the hard line back to the PED where the services hook up. So basically I saved $60K by doing the work myself and the cable company covered the remainder. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments whether you think OP is the a-hole here or not. I would love to hear your opinion. And now let's see what Reddit has to say. Comment number 1, not the a-hole. Your original offer was fair and would not have required anything from them. They chose not to take it, which negatively impacted you. They are now asking to inconvenience you way more than they would have been inconvenienced originally in order to take advantage of the work you had to put in because they would not originally help you. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. If your friend is so incensed on your neighbor's behalf, then they can help dig the trench or pay for the construction. You gave your neighbor a good offer the last they refused, and you have every right to refuse having your property disturbed for their benefit. If your neighbor wants to dig their own trench to lay cable, they can Google how to do it with their slowpoke DSL. And yeah, ripe stars, I gotta say, that is one of the things I just love about Thailand. The internet here is so fast, and not just in the big cities. Even if you go to some mountain village, they have fiber there, and the internet is pretty much faster than in a European big city. Absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, the next one is a malicious compliance story. So my SUV was throwing error code, so we took it to the dealership to have them look at it. They informed us that the computer just needed a reset and everything was good. We did not believe them, so when we went to pick it up, my husband drove it around the parking lot, and just as we suspected, it was driving awful and now making a horrible noise. So we went back inside and told them they are wrong and to fix it properly. Several days later, they called us back to say that they figured it out and it was definitely fixed now. Something to do with the transfer case, and a $2,000 bill later, we are told it is fixed and we won't have any further issues. Great, I drive it away and I get error codes again. By this point we are beyond frustrated because this vehicle just keeps costing us money and is being nothing but issues for the past year or so. So then we take it to the dealership and tell them we would like to sell it. The lady evaluating it asks us if there's anything wrong with it, and I inform her that I just picked it up from your service department earlier today and they told us that it works perfectly. She takes the keys and goes out to look at it, comes back in and asks about flashing lights and some weird things. We agree with her and let her in on the story. We walk over to the service desk and inform them that their sales department won't buy it because there's something wrong with it, so why does the service department keep telling us that there's nothing wrong with it? He went so red and immediately went to speak with his manager. They ended up having to call the vehicle engineers to figure out how to fix it, and we only had to pay the cost on the part that apparently would actually fix it. It was something to do with the computer, something that needs replacing after the transfer case goes. I cannot say for certain if it was finally fixed or not, because the day I picked it up, I traded it in for a different make. The next one is titled, I Got Revenge on My Neighbor. So I have lived in a townhouse for the last 3 years. I live with my husband and 2 60-pound dogs. For a bit of background, I got attacked by a dog just before my neighbors moved in 2.5 years ago. Which left me with a fear of strange animals up until recently, when I was able to work through my trauma with my therapist. My neighbors have 4 loud and reactive dogs, 3 chihuahuas and 1 Australian shepherd, which charges the fence whenever they see someone on the other side and bark constantly. This had prevented me from using my backyard for the last 2 summers. Now that I have worked past the panic attacks and fear, I am spending a majority of weekends in my yard and let my dogs go back and forth freely from the yard. My dogs have been well socialized and don't have any interest in the fence when the other dogs are reacting. Up until yesterday, when the neighbors' dogs come out, I would bring my dogs inside, but it would still mean a minute or so for their dogs to calm down. I would let my dogs back outside to play when the neighbors go back in. This was no big deal for me. Now, cue Sunday. The neighbors let their dogs out, they react, I bring my dogs in. The same old routine. Except my neighbor curses me under her breath. Keep your effing mouth shut. This is not the first time they have been rude either. This gets under my skin, considering her dog's reactivity is the reason I did not feel comfortable in my own backyard, and it is not my dogs who are reactive. Plus, I've always been the one to bring my dogs in, not the neighbor. So I have started to be a bit petty. Now when the neighbor let their dogs out, I stay out and play fetch with my dogs while her animals are going apecrap instead of bringing my dogs inside as I've always done. My dogs love it because they are getting more exercise than before, and it has only been 3 days and my neighbor is exasperated and has to chase her dogs around the garden. Side note, they have another dog on the opposite side of them, which they are equally reactive to as well. I got patio furniture being delivered tomorrow and I fully expect to enjoy my yard to the fullest this summer. After a week or 2, I'll probably put up a visual blockade so her dogs cannot see mine to be nice, but I'm not going to restrict my well-trained animals for her untrained ones any longer. Don't appreciate my courtesy, I won't give it. Update: the neighbors decided to cuss me out and tell me to go inside last night. I said no, but put the dogs inside because the neighbors were being aggressive. They said our dogs should be able to be outside too, go inside. I said your dog's reactivity is not my problem and they are more than welcome to use your yard. The fact that they cannot stop charging the fence long enough to piss is your issue, and stood in the middle of my yard. They shouted at me to get the F inside and I told them, make me. A bit childish I know. One told to meet them out front. I said, no, if you want something from me, climb over this fence yourself. They yelled a bit more and I did not respond, and then they went inside after a minute. I think the neighbors have finally cracked a bit and it's only 1 week. Not proud and honestly don't want to deal with this nonsense, but I'm not going to bend to a bully. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, power to the OP, you should never bend to a bully. Props to him. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.